Joe and I went to Mar-A-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
Joe and I realized it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
Joe Scarborough and Mika from Morning Joe have gone from the Trump hate fest to now kissing up to the man who's in power. And we're going to go through exactly what they said, what they've said in the past, and probably why they're going up to Trump and having this meeting and being like, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And it has to do with, once again, like we all know, money. It's SeanDaniel here. If you guys enjoy the videos and if you think I am better looking than Joe Scarborough, consider subscribing. If you think he is a better looking man than me, please do not subscribe. If you are subscribed, then I know where you stand in this contest. Let's go. Let's go through what they said in the past about their enemy number one, Donald Trump.
This is not a reach. I could go back and talk about Nazi Germany, and I do it without any concerns whatsoever. And if people can't start drawing the parallels, well, you're just stupid, or you have your head in the sand, or you're one of them. The point applies even if this is not Germany 1933. The point applies if this is something not as savage as Germany 1933, but simply an autocrat who decides to be a dictator on day one, who decides to arrest all those who he doesn't like, to take news networks off the TV as he said he would do if they're not supportive of him, who's talked about assassinating generals that aren't sufficiently loyal to him, has complained to his chief of staff that his generals should be more like Hitler's generals. Of course, Hitler's generals tried to kill Adolf Hitler, but Donald Trump didn't know history, so he didn't know that. Whose own lawyer said in court he could use SEAL Team 6 to assassinate political rivals. And if he were president of the United States, he could not be arrested. We still have an electorate, 70 million plus, that will be voting for a man who said he was going to assassinate for treason the chairman of the Joint Chiefs because he didn't support him on January the 6th, who has said just in recent days he was going to execute Liz Cheney with a firing squad, 9 guns pointed and shooting at her face. A man who has said that he was going to shut down CBS because he didn't like how they edited an interview. A man who said he was going to be a dictator from day one.
Now, what has Mika said in the past about Trump before we see how they flip-flopped?
Yesterday's Trump rally from hell at Madison Square Garden. So what did you make of it?
Well, I think it was everything that you need to know about Donald Trump in one weird white nationalist Nazi-type rally. And of course, there's historic parallels to where and when this happened. But even more so, it also points out everything that we know, but it's important to act on right now because this is the moment and we won't have it again. Nobody gets a pass trashing America. Yeah. Puerto Rican Americans, nobody gets a pass degrading people. Nobody gets a pass degrading legal migrants and terrorizing people. Nobody gets a pass threatening his enemies with using the military against them. Nobody gets a pass on inciting an insurrection. Nobody gets a pass on saying he fancies Hitler and wants to have generals like his. Nobody gets a pass on insulting veterans and saying those who died for our country are suckers and losers, except for convicted felon Donald Trump.
Yes. So that's how Mika and Joe have been talking about Trump in the past, and especially leading up to the election. Again, all lies, all bullshit, all stuff that was probably told to them from above that they just took orders and repeated. But now they met with Trump at Mar-A-Lago and seem to have realized who's in power right now and who they need to cozy up to.
Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-A-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
Before we analyze what really went on, what do you think was the reason they went to meet with Trump and Trump was willing to meet with them? Put it in the comments below. The reason I say it's about money before, and we're going to get into exactly why and show you some of the TV ratings and how really MSNBC is in the gutter right now because their viewership does not believe them anymore after the BS they told us. But first of all, why would Trump even need to meet with them? As we're going to see in a second, their ratings is pretty crap. Their viewership's pretty crap. They've been telling lies. Why would Trump even need to meet with them? Is it a power move? Is it to maybe for them to cozy up to him because they need to change their messaging on their program because it's been way too ridiculous and it's turned off viewers? I just don't understand why Trump would meet with them, especially when they've been so viciously against him. Which this is something that Laura Loomer has just said in a tweet about this. She said the idea that we can unite with these people is outrageous because that's the BS, fake, liberal, properly accepted, politically correct statement that Mika was trying to say, oh, we're going to unite the country. She said, I honestly hate the concept of forgiveness. You can never forgive or forget people who enabled assassination attempts on your life. There is no reason for lines of communication to be open with these people. I don't understand why Trump is meeting with them. Really don't. What does he have to gain? Because according to these guys and according to the current ratings at MSNBC, it seems like the only thing that Morning Joe has to gain from a meeting from Trump is saving their jobs, saving their viewership, saving their fan base by bringing it back from the Democrat pecking order and orders that they've been following to say, bringing it away from that and bringing it back to something actually reasonable because the audience is not falling for the BS they've been sharing.
So just on CNN and MSNBC, you're absolutely right that they're announcing a bunch of layoffs. Their ratings are destroyed. I think they're down. MSNBC ratings are down like 50% since the election. What that tells me is that their own audience.
Wait, sorry, since the election?
Since the election.
50%?
Yeah. And
what that
tells me is that their captive viewer base, who's been tuning in for years to all of this TDS, has now realized that they were deceived by MSNBC, and they've lost credibility even with their most fervent supporters.
So yes, Morning Joe, I can show you guys the rating chart. It's kind of boring to look at. But Morning Joe is down 39% since the election. Joy Reid is down 54%. Okay, even Fox News went down since the election, okay? But when you compare the ratings comparison between Fox News and CNN and MSNBC, yes, they all have dropped off a bit since the election. It makes sense. But look at how much of a difference there is. 6 p.m. time slot, Friday, November 8th. Bret Baier, 472,000 viewers. CNN, 72,000. MSNBC, 66,000. And it just continues this whole trend of Fox News destroying not only CNN, but especially MSNBC. Now, if they continually have those terrible ratings, how does it come back to the anchors? Well, listen to this.
I don't know if you saw, but a bunch of the anchors at CNN are not renewing because their advertising is so far off that, like Chris Wallace, I think, was making $8 million a year, $9 million a year. And he just said, I'm going to go do podcasts because I think they lowballed his offer. And if they lose
there's a bunch
all
of
that advertising from pharma, which I think in some of these networks is a third or half, and that's all networks. That's from Fox to CNN and every MSNBC, everybody combined. If they lose advertising from pharma, it's over. Like those news networks are going to lose half their revenue overnight. That would be a death blow, Chamath, to your question.
So if they're losing their viewership and they lose their big advertisers, partially because their viewership is so crappy, because the viewers are leaving because they saw through the election that what you guys were selling us was not true, then that company, MSNBC, does not have the money to shell out big contracts to their big hosts, like Chris Wallace from CNN, who decided to leave because apparently they lowballed his offer, and he thinks podcast is where the action is at, was his quote. So maybe these guys on Morning Joe are realizing, we need to bring our messaging back a little bit if we're going to even reach any people and have anyone watch us. Because by Trump's election results, it shows most of the people are not buying your BS. Plus the ratings are showing that as well. But really, Trump explains it best, what they are scared of hearing.
You're fired. Get out. Get out. You're fired.
Okay, it's time to do the outro. Yes, okay. Since Trump's staring me down, I'll do it. It's Sean Daniel here. If you guys enjoyed the video, consider subscribing or watching another video right here. Sorry, Trump, I'm going to cover your face. And if you guys are already subscribed, thank you so much. I will see you in the next one. Joe Scarborough. Wow, that Scarborough. Damn.